This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest episode of Doc and Jock. Now, granted, we do have to let everybody know that Doc will have an extra pep in his step. I think I am the only person on the show that had any sort of football happiness over the course of the college football weekend and the NFL. So, thankfully, Michigan State was able to secure that W. Thankfully. And that salvaged what was really, in the end, a terrible football weekend for Michigan and for the Detroit Lions. We're going to recap it. The Detroit Tigers have an interesting series against the Yankees. Mize kicks it off on Tuesday. I'm excited to see how it plays out. We're going to check in with the Lions. Is it time to panic? That game was brutal. It was brutal from start to finish. That game did not go in any way, shape, or form how people thought it would go, so it was crazy. Cuz, welcome in. Let's start with this. What is up with Michigan and their just absolute refusal? Listen, I want to let everybody know the quarterback position, there is an opportunity that they look at this thing called an arm, and they have biceps, and it has kind of strength, and yet when it comes to a talent that you're paying now, not just beer money to, not just under the table cash, you're paying $2 million. I would think that somebody has to see this game plan, and you look at it on the sense of Oklahoma, you got to be a little more aggressive on the road. And if someone looked at that, if I was a donor and I said, this is the game plan for our $2 million quarterback, let's let him throw the damn ball. If he messes up, he messes up. But that game plan, similarly with the Lions, the game plans that were utilized, I thought hurt Michigan. I thought they could have been in the game, but things were chaotic with Underwood and his running back. It just started off in a real bad way where if you're going to go on the road, that's not the way in which you go attack a team like Oklahoma that has a defensive coordinator in their mindset and their coaching staff. So I look at it like, man, that was a coaching blunder, and that's why Michigan left Oklahoma with the loss.
Yeah, look, I was watching that game and I was screaming at the television because I didn't understand what Sharon Moore's game plan was. I thought it was absolute shit. You go to our notes for the rundown, and I said that his game plan was shit. I was so frustrated by what he tried to do. This is your highest paid player, right? Because at this point, we're in this weird little paradox where we've moved away from them being college student athletes to now these guys are essentially pro players. This guy is getting paid buku dollars. This is the guy that you went out and you heavily recruited, and you had to come with your very best offer to get him away from LSU, and he took it. So there's going to be extra scrutiny. He should be able to perform at this point. He looks completely lost on some of these plays. The guy is physically looks unbelievable. Like, he is a physical specimen. Why don't you allow him to run? Why don't you allow him to use his body? Allow him to use his legs? Allow him to really open it up with his arm and help create some plays going downfield where you can kind of take the top off the defense a little bit, or at least threaten with that, so that way it could maybe open up some of that power run game that you have. Because if we're being honest, the run game, which Michigan's offense is really predicated on and based upon, is still really good. You've seen it in this game. You know, you had Haynes be able to rip off a 75-yard touchdown, which was spectacular. So you have the ability to run the ball, but you have to be able to complement it. And the guy who's cashing a monster check completely underperformed in this game, and I don't necessarily know if it was all of his fault. To me, it feels like Sharon Moore really put some shackles on him and has really boxed him in. We talked about keeping training wheels on him for that first game, and I thought it was the smart move to do. It was his first game underneath the bright lights. It was his first college game. You don't necessarily need him to go out there and show it all. And you really do need to put up some bumpers, just some parameters for him to stay between. And I think that's a good way to almost go baptism by fire with him, right? Like, here's this. We're going to get you introduced to all this. We'll get you in the deep end next week. Now you're in the deep end. You're playing a team that is able to score points in a hurry. They've got a quarterback who can throw the ball well. That kid can run like a fullback. So you've got a dual threat quarterback who really took that game over, and you're playing without your best defensive weapon, at least for the first half. At a certain point, you kind of got to switch your mentality up, and it's got to be a track meet to start. And then from there, you can dial it back. You needed to let him just go out, balls to the wall, and just dial some plays up and get him comfortable and let him throw the rock around the field. And instead, Sherrone Moore was kind of like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to run a halfback dive here, and then we'll run a halfback dive back to the left, and then maybe you can throw the ball out into the flats, and we'll see what we can pick up there. The entire game plan for Michigan was dog shit. And then you look at Wink Martindale defense, like it's one of those things that is so incredibly frustrating, right? Like I remember last season watching the Ohio State game, and I was like, I can't believe this is actually working. Like this, like Ryan Day just kind of gets so tongue-tied and so mixed up when Michigan is playing. He doesn't know what to do with himself. And I'm just like, I don't know how the hell this defense is actually keeping them in this game. Wink Martindale's defense, this is why it didn't work in the NFL. When it works, it's beautiful. And when it doesn't work beautifully. Like it is a beautiful disaster when it doesn't work. And you kind of seen it this week when they're taking on Oklahoma. It didn't work. Like your guys couldn't get up there and put pressure on this quarterback. And the quarterback was able to just kind of wheel out of the pocket if the pocket did collapse. And it's so open downfield. The secondary is liable to be taken advantage of in a Wink Martindale's defense. It's been like that since he came in last year. It was like that on Saturday night. It's going to continue to be like that. And the fact that Michigan doesn't adjust to that or hasn't, Wink Martindale himself hasn't been able to adjust his defensive scheme, to me, makes me really question how far this team can really go, because it really felt like going into the season, you had Underwood, who really kind of needed to get comfortable. He really needed to get used to playing at this level. And the hope was he could get that figured out by the time game 2, game 3, game 4 rolled around. With Sherrone Moore's game plan, I don't know if he gets it figured out by game 6 or by game 7. And the hope was that the defense could keep you in these games long enough for him to figure it out, and then you could have some complimentary football. What I seen on Saturday does not lead me to believe that Underwood's going to get this figured out until very late in the season. And with Wink Martindale's defense, I feel like it can be picked apart and it can be poached and it can be completely annihilated if you go up against a talented quarterback and if there are talented wide receivers on the other team. If those defensive and offensive lines can't win their battle up front, this team will not go far. And defensively, the edge rushers and the D tackles have to be able to collapse that pocket and make the opposing quarterback very uncomfortable for his defensive scheme to work. If you can't do that, you've seen what happens. You have pass plays of 30, 40 yards down the field, and then the guys can pick the ball up and just run because the secondary is just getting torched. And offensively, the guys aren't winning up front. You can't get that run game going. And like I said, the pass game needs to complement that run game. And Sherrone Moore does not seem like he wants to allow Underwood to run, and he does not seem like he wants Underwood to be able to throw the ball deep. So I'm not really sure what they're trying to do there. I was completely frustrated by Saturday's game. Just so upsetting watching them play, because I really did feel like this was a game that they should have and could have won,
right,
if you came in with a different game plan.
Right.
Yet
and
they did not.
Exactly. And I feel like when you're on the road and you have a young team, there is an expectation that there's going to be a little bit of a disadvantage. So be more aggressive. I feel like that when coaches see young players, they're just fearful of mistakes. Look, if he goes out there and throws 2-3 picks, he learns from it. Like, you're expected kind of to struggle on the road. You need to kind of let him showcase some talent. Let him showcase what he's about a little bit. Utilize the strengths of your team. Utilize his arm. Utilize his athleticism. Be aggressive. And if he throws 2-3 picks, he probably will learn from it, like where he maybe can fit the window, what he can test, at least see where he can fit the ball in regards to some tight windows. Like let him try. That's where I feel like the crazy part was you went with a game plan of trying to be physical, running the ball, but your offensive line couldn't cut it. That was bad. The offensive line play at Michigan was not to the standard that you're used to seeing from Michigan. Now they got a rebound. Sharon Moore can take the suspension against Central and kind of learn a little bit about offensive football. But you're absolutely right. Michigan fans are upset because you have this quarterback, and that loss didn't have to go that way. If you had aired it out a little bit, utilized, and I think they just have to. You don't have to go from your offense into the air raid Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, but you just got to have some more concept of the passing game. And look, quite frankly, because you might need to just call up Connor Stallions again and say, look, we ran it once with you, let's run it again. And
well, here's the thing: he might be on Central sideline.
Right.
Who knows? Nobody really knows,
bro. He actually, if you follow him on X, he brought up some coaching points. He was like, Michigan's very predictable, the way they were collapsing, the way they were doing their thing. He was on there kind of coaching up Sharon Moore, and I'm trying to decipher it. But if you go on there, I'm trying to see if every third letter is a code. I feel like those tweets are not just coaching points. I feel like if we do a little research from Doc and Jock, maybe every fourth letter is like a little bit of a code. This is the new way I think Connor is influencing Sharon. So I'm going to decipher it, and I will be the one to break his Twitter code. So I'm looking at it now. Right now, nothing is hitting me, but he's not just posting these football assessments for the fun of it. There's something going on there. There's some words. There's some subliminal message that he's already relayed to Sharon Moore, and they'll figure it out. But
well, here's the deal. Sharon Moore is not going to be there for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
So maybe him and Sharon Moore can get together and watch these games together and then converse and try to figure it out. Maybe he could be one of those coaches who are on retainer. And, he's not technically paid by the school. But, Sharon Moore's got a budget. Maybe he slips him a couple of ducats here and there. And, he coaches up Sharon Moore.
Right.
Maybe that's how that needs to work out.
Exactly, because this clean era is not working for me, brother. We got to kind of get back to what we need to be doing here, which is cheating and making sure that you know what's going on with Oklahoma, because this clean era might not produce a lot of championships or playoff appearances. But let's see. But, man, because what was great.
Here's the thing. You speak about championships, right? For MSU, I want to know where you're at, man, because I don't know if the Jonathan Smith era is going to work out. This is my concern, okay? Yep. And you tell me if I'm way off base. I know last week you said you got to give him at least 3 years. He's got to be able to build. He's got to be able to put a system in this, that, the other thing. I just kind of feel like with NIL being what it is and with the transfer portal being what it is, I feel like you can get good quick and you can get good in a hurry. So whether or not Jonathan Smith has to go out there and shake down Mr. UWM for a couple of dollars, or maybe he's got to go find another donor or another alumni and try to get a couple dollars for their NIL program. This is the thing. I feel like watching Boston College play football. I think what Bill O'Brien is doing is very nice for Boston College. And I think Boston College is getting better. Okay. But at no point when I think MSU Boston College football, MSU Boston College hockey makes total sense to me. But MSU Boston College football, I think MSU should beat Boston College every day of the week. And yet you had to go to overtime to beat BC. Any concerns with what Jonathan Smith is doing here?
Yeah, I have one concern, because football is 3 phases. And I love his phase of offense. Aiden Childs, Nick Marsh, the running back, the tight end Masunis is emerging. They got another tight end opposite of him that's working his way into productivity. I like the offense. But just before we started, I was sending you film of what I like to watch. When I watch film, I watch defense. And so watching Michigan State's defense, there's no D in the defense. I was like, that doesn't look like an NFL pass rush. That doesn't look like any coverage that's going to help. That's not going to fly when you play Michigan if you're going to run defend like that. I love watching defensive football in terms of see what kind of stunts they're using, what kind of pressure they're bringing off the edge, what kind of turnover are they hitting. I was walking away going, if I dial up a blitz, I'm expecting someone to get hit. like a couple times? Can you hit somebody? Do you guys like need me to go in there and scream at them and be like, this is violent. You need to take someone's effing head off. But when overtime hit, I was definitely nervous. I was like, oh man, the defense didn't do its job. I had a feeling, and my daughter now knows that how I watch football, and she's like, you're too negative. I said, listen, it's Michigan State. There's no chance they're going to do a pick six and end this game and just make my life easy. No, it's got to go to overtime, and then we score and they score, and I'm like, oh my God. But luckily that 2-point conversion worked out, and by that point it was so funny because it was such a long day, and that was the tail end of a long week. I was so confused. I was asking our Michigan State writer, I'm like, I'm sorry, Emmett. I'm like, I'm confused. Like, wait a minute. It was 40-40. Then, like, there's rules now. You have to go for it for the 2-point conversion. And what happens if it wouldn't? It would have been another overtime. And he was just taking me through it because I was so confused and tired. By that point, I was watching it, but barely understanding what I was watching. But luckily, they got the 2-point conversion. They ended the game, and that was that. So I was so happy that they got they avenged, because last year's game was a special game for Boston College. State came out on the wrong side. And look, if they can just get anything out of that defense, because Michigan's going to have an easy game plan. If they run the ball effectively with their guy, he could get 200 yards against the Spartans. So I'm really concerned on that side of the ball. But look, hey, we'll take 2-0 any day of the week. Now we're inching closer to that 6 wins, which is great, because when you don't have expectations and you get a surprise win and you're after it, and it's a good situation. And look, grit, toughness, win a tough game. Aiden Childs has taken a step forward. Marsh is saying that this stuff means a little bit more. There's more attention.
I was going to ask you.
Yes.
Do you feel like this was Aiden Childs' coming out game, right?
Yes,
like,
yes.
He seemed like he kind of took this game personally.
Yes.
Seemed like he was like, okay, guys, get on my back and we're going to get there. We're going to get the W. To me, it felt like he grew up a little bit in this game.
Exactly. And that's what you liked from last year, was that, he got thrown into the fire. He learned the nature of a Big Ten rivalry. He took his lumps, and now you utilize him. He's got skills. He can move. He can evade. You can move the pocket. You can find your tight ends. You can run an offense that is competitive, which is great. Now you got to go out there and find the defense, because that defense is going to upset a lot of people. And for me, man, watching defense in the way I have the last couple of years, if you can't get off the field on third down, it's so deflating when you get ahead of the sticks, you get a nice play, you get it to 2nd and 8, and then you get to 3rd and 4 or 5, you can't get off the field. It's tough, man. It's tough to play defensive football, and the Spartans got to take the next step forward. But hey, good win for the Spartans. They salvaged the weekend for Michigan fans of Michigan football, and look, you move forward, and you got to build on that momentum, because State oftentimes has the propensity to have a letdown game afterwards. So we'll see what happens as the season progresses. But for Michigan State, it's all about development and growth. Find some edge rushers and linebackers that are a little bit more physical and can win their battles. Now, we'll talk about the Tigers here and preview the Yankee series before the end of the show, but I do want to talk about the devastating loss to the Packers. What was devastating was not the loss, because, look, you're going to go to Lambeau, you realize they got the juice from Micah. What disappointed the Lions fans the most, and what's got everybody angry, is, and I can't believe the Tuesday headline, like they just went, like in 1 week, they went for the jugular on John Morton. They called him in a headline. The Lions rolled out Timu Ben Johnson in a headline in front of the world. I was like, wow, that's an outlet. And in the end, though, you can't really lie. That's what I asked Dan Campbell in such a way. I said to him on Monday, I said, were your route concepts a little bit simplistic? Like, you ran a lot of verticals. You weren't doing a lot of exotic things. You weren't trying to break the zone with in routes, exotic plays that Ben Johnson did to get the wide receivers all the way in regards to your deep passing game. It looked predictable. So I used the wrong word. I used simplistic. But he explained, he said that was the plan, was vertical routes, and if there was nothing there, just check it down. So Dan, in essence, admitted, look, game one, he admitted it was kind of a simplistic plan to try and win the game by just dinking and dunking. They wanted to do that. They knew the Packers were going to do too high. They wanted to dink and dunk, but execute in the red zone. So what was disappointing is that if John Morton says to me, I'm in the lab every day at 3:30, that's not what I'm expecting as the output. I felt like you went simple, and you got a Ferrari, and you treated it like a Ford Escort offense. So those are the first couple questions. Then Dan has to protect John Morton week 1. He's like, I thought he did a good job. We just kind of stifled in the red zone. But the plays were not creative. You basically lobbed the ball to the Packers and said, hey, tell us what you want to do and we'll kind of adapt to it. That doesn't really work on the road. You go and take it. You needed maybe, okay, you used Isaac Tesla 3 reps. Maybe you use him 10. A couple times in the red zone, throw it to him. Hell, he might catch it with one arm. You never know. You got to think outside the box. I felt like John Morton brought the 1989 Lions offense to the table and said, hey, we're going to just pound the rock and get after it, but you got 2.1 yards a carry. It was a terrible game plan. It was not executed well. And then the things that you do well, the offensive line was poor. Micah Parsons was able to flex on you and dominated Sewell in the limited time that he was there. It was a collapse. And what stunk was, I truly did feel that the offense could just weather anybody, but man, I underestimated coaching. Like, yeah, Ben Johnson was a wizard, but I felt like if you have the wizardry of the talent that you got, John Morton took a Ferrari and slowed it down, man. They put a restrictor plate on our offense.
That shit looked like a Pinto, bro. Yeah, it was horrible.
They put a restrictor plate on the offense. What are you talking about? Like, I don't care if it's too high safety. Throw it deep and just tell Jared Goff, okay, fine. If it's intercepted, it's a 60-yard punt. Launch it to J-Mo. You just gave him $27.5 million. You just said, hey, we're going to give you 60 no matter what. You get $1 million in your career for every catch you ever made. Like, what the hell was that? So I hate to belabor the point, but the Free Press got it right. It was a Temu Ben Johnson offense, and nobody liked it.
Bro, so much to get into with what you said there, from JMO to Timo Ben Johnson.
Oh,
look, man, there's plenty of blame to go around with this game, and it's coaching, it's the offensive coordinator, it's the defensive coordinator. I really felt like there was nothing creative from Kelvin Shepherd. It really felt like it was just kind of this stagnant scheme that he kept kind of running, and he just kind of kept throwing guys at this wall, and nobody could get through the Green Bay offensive line. I mean, like when Aiden Hutchinson is kind of a non-factor, you go back, you watch that game, he didn't do anything. They neutralized him. He didn't do nothing. And that's supposed to be your guy. That's supposed to be like the best player on your defense. And he was MIA. To me, you've got to develop something a little bit more exotic. You got to develop something a little bit more interesting. You got to be able to move guys around a little bit. Maybe you have a guy move inside, have them then cut back outside. It's just different things that you can do defensively that aren't really difficult. It's like just very simple motions. And I think that's kind of the same thing that you got with John Morton. He didn't put any window dressing on anything. He just kind of came out and he was like, this is what we're running. And it was a very vanilla offense. It was a very vanilla defense. And it just, to me, it just kind of seemed like everything was very static. Whatever they did in the preseason, it felt like they brought it along with them to game 1. And this was a game that you really needed this game. One, because it would reduce the temperature that everybody was feeling with all the changes that happened this offseason. 2, it would give you a little bit of confidence that, hey, you did hire the right guys. You got the right OC, you got the right DC. Everything's going to work out. And it would put to bed a little bit of concern that you didn't do enough on the defensive line. You didn't do enough to address getting to the quarterback. You didn't do enough adding another pass rusher alongside Aiden Hutchinson. And really and truly, all this game did was really just put gasoline on everything we've been talking about. It just exacerbated all of the stuff that we've been concerned with. We've been concerned about John Morton and his ability to game plan and call plays. Look, the run game was not good. The pass game was worse. The offensive line, with all of the changeover they had there, I mean, you go and you jump on any type of social media, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Instagram, whatever, you're going to find videos of Packers defenders not being blocked by anybody, as you had the center and the guard moving off to the side and leaving a running back staring down the gauntlet of a defender who's trying to eat his face. Like, there are multiple times that this happened. And you look at Jared Goff running for his life. There was a point where if Jared Goff would have just held the ball for another second,
Right.
the play completely develops, opens up, and he's got a wide receiver wide open. Instead, Jared Goff was shell shocked and ends up throwing the ball into the ground, and just they get off the field. And it was like 3rd and 3. And you would have picked up 5 yards if you just held the ball for one more second. But he felt pressure that wasn't there, and he just threw the ball away. And it's because he'd been under such distress during the early parts of that game, and it just kind of carried over through the rest of the game. So you have all of that going on. You have a D coordinator who, like I said, rolls out a very vanilla game plan. That's not great. And it just, to me, this was a game where all of the concerns that we had going into the year really came to the forefront. And I think if you're a Lions fan, you have to have a little bit of concern with what's going on with this team right now, because offense didn't look good, defense didn't look good, special teams was okay, but there's not a whole lot your special teams can do, especially if you're looking at scoring points when your offense can't move the ball down the field and your defense can't stop anybody. So this team has a lot of question marks. Week 1 did nothing to answer any of them. If anything, it made things worse.
Correct.
And if you go back to that defense, it really does feel like Brad Holmes and his arrogance really kneecapped this defense, because you couldn't get to the quarterback.
Right.
Like, there was zero pressure on Jordan Love. He just was able to sit in the pocket all day long and throw the ball, go through all of his reads. It really felt like it was that time when Dak Prescott was like, yeah, man, I had all the time in the world. I could go through all my reads and then go back through them again, and somebody would get open. The secondary specifically couldn't contain anybody. Kerryon Arnold was getting burnt. When he wasn't being injured, he was out there just being used and abused. And this is a guy who's supposed to be one of your studs. This is supposed to be a building block. And yet you made him look bad because you couldn't put anybody else opposite of Aiden. Like, there was zero pressure from anybody on that defensive line. Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, anybody in the middle, anybody else you want to throw on the outside, zero. Does Brad Holmes have to take some of the blame here? Because I feel like this loss, it's not just on this coaching staff. It's not just on this offensive line. It's not just on these vanilla play calls and these vanilla schemes that these OCs were running. I feel like Brad Holmes has to take a little bit of this on the chops, because he didn't do enough to address this defense. And I feel like this is going to be a talking point throughout the rest of the season.
Right. And the issue is that Dan Campbell's asked about, okay, well, if everyone's going to double team Aiden, which should be the plan, what's the other thought? He's like, well, we got to just have Davenport win the reps. Well, I'm watching film and Davenport wasn't winning, but I will give credit to the stout offensive line of the Packers. They brought a plan. They had the running backs chip. They had opportunities to get doubles at certain spots. Jordan Love was evading the pocket. So it's really tough. But early on, what was terrible is you have to get off the field on 3rd down. It's 3rd and 6. That's the winning reps. That's the time you got to win. So throughout the course of the game, look, you can't have 0. Basically, you can't have 0 sacks as opposed to the opposition has 4. You know, it just doesn't work that way. And because I think there's an issue too, which is I think philosophically, they don't really care about sacks. They care about pressures, but they only got 2 the whole game. 2 pressures recorded in an NFL game is never going to cut it. And he's like, well, we got to get it from the interior. We got to get it from our backers, because it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And I don't think organizationally, you've cycled through so many defensive line coaches. I don't think organizationally that really is the plan. It's just to be disruptive. And if you get home, you get home. But they understand that you need Aiden to take some attention away. But Marcus Davenport has to win. And look, so far so good. Our tracker is he's survived 1 game. He's on to the second. But yeah, now outside of the being worried about him being injured, he's got to produce. Like, you got to win those reps, and he wasn't winning, and the offensive line of the Packers was winning. And so what was so frustrating for me was you get ready, it's a beautiful Sunday, NFL kicks off, and I watch the Jets and the Steelers, and bro, it's an offensive fest. You get Tanner Engstrand getting Breece Hall going, he's throwing it to Garrett Wilson, Justin Fields is moving the pocket, and then you watch the boring-ass Lions game where they're dinking and dunking it, there's no innovation, and then you cleanse that, you wash away that nastiness, and you get Ravens-Bills, and you're like, this is offensive football. There's no waiting around. They're going at it. Like, Tanner Engstrand got after it. The Bills and the Ravens got after it. They just ran their offense. So I'm not into this slow start nonsense when you got all these players. Like, that is wrong. Like, you can't go into a game and not execute and make mistakes and have all those miscommunications on your offensive line. You got to figure it out. You got to figure it out fast because now the Bears are desperate and they just had an awful ending to their first game. So they don't want to go 0-2, and you know Ben Johnson's going to have them riled up. I'm nervous too because I think Caleb Williams can be gotten. But you can't have that same pass rush philosophy of just, well, we just got to win our one-on-ones. You haven't won them for 3 years. Nobody's buying that phrase anymore. So we're not good, and the Lions are not winning their one-on-ones. So they're going to have to start because the fan base is getting really unruly and upset because Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are kind of neglecting the one thing that they feel like could help, which is you need someone that knows how to sack the quarterback. And also, too, there's also a thing called reliability. Like, did they not kind of see that Myles Garrett almost had 3 sacks on 3 plays and was just like first down sack, second down sack, almost had a third down sack, and he can be disruptive right from the get-go, and everybody's paying attention to him. So Aiden's got to also step it up, and you can't just use the excuse that you're getting doubled. You got to get after it. And if he's going to be a step slower, I'm sorry, that number goes down into the 30s. I'm sorry, I'm not paying.
Well,
I'm not paying $50 million for 9 sacks a year. I'm paying $50 million for 18. So that's something that Aiden looked okay. He was doubled and tripled, but at the same token, I don't care. Your job is to disrupt the quarterback. In the second play of the game, if you watch the film, Jordan Love is bouncing 4 times. Bounce, bounce, bounce. He finds a wide receiver wide open, and that's just not going to be winning football, especially against you're not playing crumb bums anymore. You're playing good offensive lines. You're playing playoff teams. So there's no excuse for starting slow. I'm sorry. You got to, every game has meaning and every game has impact. You have talent. Like for Dan Campbell to say, well, we need to work on our bread and butter first before we get more exotic. My man, this is the 4th year of Jared Goff running your ship, 5th year. Like this is like you need to be like serving up the steak and filet right now. Like I'm not trying.
That was the whole selling point of going in house was that everything was going to, for the most part, stay the same. There was going to be some subtle differences, like you were going to season the steak a little bit different,
right.
But it was still going to be filet. That's not what we got. We didn't even get grade C ground beef. You know what I'm saying? So, like, what are you talking about? You've got to learn the basics first. Like, these are all things that should have really been worked out in the preseason with your OC and your DC. So, those things you can't have it both ways. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. And then I think what else is really frustrating is I wake up in the morning on Sunday and I see that JMO's been extended to the tune of like $28 million. And in my head, I'm like, what the hell are we doing, man? You're extending a wide receiver 2 after you just traded 3 third-round picks for the guy who is probably going to replace him.
No, not going to replace him
in this offense.
You're not going to replace him now.
And, well, you can't. Like, you're stuck with him. And you couldn't spend any money on any edge rushers. Like with the money you gave him, you could have went out and you could have traded a 2nd round pick. So you don't have any problem trading picks. You could have traded a 2nd round pick, maybe a 3rd round pick, and picked up Trey Hendrickson and gave him the same exact contract.
Yeah, see, okay,
fair. The same money.
But again,
and you could have did it for a 1 or 2 year deal and it would have been fine.
But because I know you may not like it, but I told you this and I sang it too on X at Detroit Podcast. I'm gonna need you to sing along with me. And it goes like something like this. I think you can relate. I don't want to grow up, but if I did, I'd want to be a Brad Holmes draft pick. You get drafted, you get loved, and you get money early. But because
it's unreal.
It's not unreal. It's not unreal because if he's a guy that can get you 10 touchdowns and 1,000 yards, that could cost you $40 million in 5 years. So you got him locked in.
Do you need?
You need a lot. It's an offensive league.
Even Isaac Tesla this way. Why do you need the redundancy? You don't. You're going to have to sign a guy like Brian Branch. I
don't think you are. I think you see.
Well, that's the thing. Let's go through the laundry list of guys I'd much rather have than Jamison Williams.
Okay.
Brian Branch is at the very, very top. I'd much rather have Sam Laporta. I'd much rather have, I guess, Jack Campbell. You're going to have to probably re-sign Jahmyr Gibbs. I'd want him over JMO.
I think Gibbs and Laporta.
A laundry list of guys I'd much rather have.
I think they keep Gibbs and Laporta and maybe Campbell and Branch. You maybe also too. Here's the thing, cuz
Here's the thing. Branch is the better safety out of the two between him and Kirby Joseph.
But now
Kirby Joseph's interceptions are basically coverage interceptions.
You have an option if you don't like. Oh my God! You have an option. He's
putting this team, like, his arrogance is just unfucking real, bro.
No. You could also trade. You could trade J-Mo now.
Love to body slam Brad Holmes.
Listen, because you could trade J-Mo. Now you could get some assets. If he has a good year, he's affordable. You could probably get.
What does that do to your cap, though? Like, that's the other thing, right? Like, I know the cap isn't real, but Brad Holmes can't sit there and, again, talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't have it both ways. You can't go on the radio and you can't tell everybody that they're dumb because they don't know how to do math and they can't figure out the salary cap when people are like, hey, man, you got $50 million in extra money. Why don't you go use that to address your defensive line? Oh, well, you don't understand the cap. We've got other things going on. You don't know what you're talking about. You can't say that and then turn around, sign a guy to a lucrative deal, give him a 3-year extension to only trade him after he has a monster year because the cap ramifications are going to hit you with that steel chair that I wrote down in our notes here. It's actually going to be the size of a garbage can, like one of those big green ones that your school used to have hanging outside the back of it in the parking lot, where the waste management truck would come and just pick it up and dump all of the trash in it. It's one of those size garbage cans that'll hit you because it's going to inflate your cap number so much because there's going to be a penalty because once you sign these guys, you have to put $67 million guaranteed. You got to put that into escrow. If he doesn't play through that contract, you're still paying that guaranteed money because essentially what you said was the Lions are good for this part of the contract. The Lions are paying him $67 million over the course of whatever. You trade him before the end of that all gets escalated to the front.
Right. Instead
of it being broke up and you're taking parts of it over the course of the 3-year extension. It all gets moved forward to 1 year. So like you can't do that. As much as I would love to trade him because I think he's a complete bonehead. Two things can be true. You can be a bonehead and you can be an incredible athlete. I think he's both. I think he's a bonehead and I think he's an incredible athlete. I also think that there's a lot of redundancy here in that wide receiver room. You've got a stud wide receiver in Amon-Ra St. Brown that you just paid a fortune to. Now you've paid your wide receiver 2 a fortune, and now you've drafted a guy that you traded a lot of draft capital. You paid a fortune in draft capital to get an Isaac Tesla. That was supposed to be the guy who was supposed to take over for this guy, and you could have him on the cheap for the next 4 years. Instead, you want to go pay this guy a ton of money, almost to the tune of $30 million a season. Yeah. It doesn't make sense, man. Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, we don't have money to pay for this, we're crying poor, and you don't know what you're talking about because you don't understand the cap, only to turn around and pay this guy a ton of money. And honestly, the production you got from him week 1,
yeah, right.
Zero. Right. You got nothing.
But I'm not saying that you can trade him. I'm not saying that you will trade him. He just gives you options because his contract, I think, in 2026 will be so far below value that people are going to love it and view it as a commodity if you wanted to. But just from your vantage point, I think J-Mo stays here. He loves his draft picks. They love the leadership. He's a Brad Holmes guy. Brad Holmes guys stay on the team. So you're going to roll with Amon-Ra, Tesla, and St. Brown for the next handful of seasons. They like that. That solidifies your offense. But you're absolutely right in that you're not allocating the proper funds to the defensive end. You're allocating funds offensively to your offensive line, to certain skill positions, but you're potentially about to make maybe, now the door is open for that conversation, the biggest organizational mistake you make if you pay Aiden Hutchinson $50 million and he's only an 8-sack-a-year guy. So this is going to be something to be interesting to watch because all the reason why they're not adding other proven talent is because they're giving it to Aiden. So he's got to deliver. And so far, there are some offensive linemen early on that can work on him, and he gets chipped and he gets blocked by running backs. He gets all the attention. So that means somebody else has to win. But unfortunately, the other guy that you're counting on to win is only making $4 or $5 million. And the first game, it didn't go right. And so this is the problem, is that now everything costs more to do. It is that much tougher. And that's why I think Brad Holmes looks a little different. That's why Dan Campbell in 2023 looks so devastated, because he realized, man, we had a big chance to win one with a cheap cap. Now we got to pay everybody. It just makes everything super tough regarding the league. And you're right. I think of the 4 players that are due, I think 2 of them are staying. I think it's going to be Gibbs and Laporta, and maybe you maneuver some things with Branch and Jack Campbell, or maybe you try to keep 2 or 3. Remember, because you get a free player almost every year. Every year the cap goes up $25 million. It could go up more. The way the numbers are just blowing up, the cap could go up 1 year, $35 million. That's a player. So if you, and also too, maybe Jack Campbell, realizes, okay, I'm not going to make $20 million. Maybe I'll just be okay with 11. And he seems like a team guy, and maybe you can keep everybody. But the issue is at hand. You're absolutely right. Is that they don't have enough talent to rush the passer consistently opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. That's a key. Now it's only one game. I do think Davenport can be more impactful. I do think that there can generate more pass rush, at least from week one. I don't think that there's a lockdown on everything that you saw week one. I do think there'll be room for growth, that they can get after it, but that they can get to the point where this football team can move forward. And I do think Brad Holmes has kind of identified what he feels. So it's a situation which this football team started 0-1. It wasn't good, but now you got Ben Johnson coming in. Do you think the focus after a loss will be there for the team to execute a lot better? Do you see changes to this offense and defense?
I mean, I would hope so. This is the one thing you can say about Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell responds, and his teams respond after a loss. I don't think they've lost back-to-back games under Dan Campbell. Not since they've started. Was it back when they had that weird tie in Pittsburgh? That's when he kind of got things going his first season. So since this team has basically gotten good, they haven't lost back-to-back games. So, yes, I think they respond. This is the concern, though. That defense couldn't get to the quarterback. All right? You're going to have to dial up some exotic plays. You're going to have to come up with something to be able to get to that quarterback. Here's the thing. Watching the game on Monday night, that offense, when it's rolling, it does look explosive. Right? Like, it looks like it can move the ball down the field. I don't think there was huge plays, but they move quick, they move efficient, and they're able to get the ball in and out. So you're going to have to be able to get to Caleb Williams. You're going to have to be able to wreck shop. And if you don't think Ben Johnson doesn't have a vendetta coming back here to Detroit, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. This dude's been getting ready for this game all season long. When the players were out there chirping about what they've seen in the preseason, he takes all these mental notes. Like, that dude's crazy. You know this. You covered him for 3 years. I think it gets much more difficult this week. I thought last week was going to be tough. I think this week gets much more difficult. The thing is, Dan Campbell responds, and I think this gives Dan Campbell enough fuel to go hard on these guys and get the best out of them. That being said, I don't know if you beat Chicago. I really don't. I could see this being a weird game where you end up losing 21-20, So I don't know if they're able to put it all together and they're able to win along the defensive front and they're able to win along the offensive line. That offensive line looked so bad. You don't realize what a player like a Frank Ragnow really means to the interior of that offensive line until you go back and you rewatch that Green Bay game.
Oof.
And dudes are just getting moved around. Dudes are missing their blocks. Dudes are running by guys who are running by them to go block other guys. And you're just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, how are you coached? Are you not coached? And look, Hank Fraley's a really good coach. He really is. But I don't know what the hell I seen on Sunday, because you're only as good as what you put on your last tape. And that was their last tape. And Hank Fraley looks like an ass. John Morton looks like an ass. Calvin Shepard looks like an ass. Dan Campbell looks like an ass. They all look like ass. So you need to fix it, and you need to get it figured out. I don't know if the pieces are in-house to fix all of the things that need to be fixed.
My goodness, cause it's crazy. The Lions need to send a care package to Dan Orlovsky. He's on the air right now just ripping the Lions. I mean, you played for the team. Like, I think he really has taken his love of Stafford and just taken it to the airways, man. It's great. He's just laying into the Lions on Pat McAfee right now. So it's crazy, man. Everyone's talking about, look, it is a little bit on Dan Campbell. That team, he said, oh, I must have put too much on him. Dude, it's you have a lot of core pieces. They can't handle it. That's not good. But a lot of it is the interior guards, Ratledge and Glasgow. So he's talking about a lot of the young players that were making mistakes. But in the end, I think a lot of good reporters are saying the same thing. The Lions came to play football. The Packers came to play the Lions. and they utilized the time to say, this is what the Lions do. This is what we're going to stop. Gibbs is not good. Dude, all you got to say, 2.1 yards per rush attempt. Awful. Gibbs sets an NFL record, 10 catches for 31 yards. That will never be broken. Never. Double-digit receptions can only get 3 yards of reception. Dude, you could almost trip and fall and get 6 yards. It's the NFL. And look what adding Micah Parsons did to the juice for the Packers. They just a guy that barely played 29 snaps in a game, and he had impact. So what signal did that send? It's go time. And what did the Lions do? They said it's here. Let's just show up and let's just see if we can grind it out and win. No, you got to take it. Fortune favors the bold always. So I think that's the lesson Brad Holmes is going to maybe have to learn real fast, is that this team might need a spark sooner rather than later. But against the Bears, I do think that there's going to be opportunities to make some plays. Dan knows Ben inside and out. I don't think in 6 days, the wrinkles that you could add with the talent that they have, they're going to stall. The Lions are going to win, I think, 28-17. I think the Lions score. It's a rowdy house. You get that juice just enough to where maybe Davenport gets a couple sacks. You get an interception. I think the game that you would have wanted to play against the Packers, you play this week. I think they rebound. There's no way they lay down. They have to be laser focused against the Packers. Everything I think that we talked about that was wrong will get a lot better. Gibbs will rush for more. The offensive line won't look as downtrodden. They'll blitz a lot more effectively. They'll find ways to take advantage of the Bears and the way in which Ford Field will come in. This is a nice game, in my opinion, for the Lions to rebound and get the W. I hope you see it the same way. But Ben Johnson week's going to be fun. Make sure you follow at Detroit Podcast. Just real fast, because did the series loss affect you with the Tigers? It was a little disappointing, but in the end, the craziness of it, all I saw this week really in regards to the Tigers, I watched the games, but the only news was Alex Cobb basically stole $15 million, and Scott Harris legitimately gave somebody a contract that I never really heard it that way.
To retire?
That woke up one day and his hip exploded. So
Yep.
the guy fell into the guy fell into $15 million. He woke up. He's like, I can't do this anymore. Oh no, that's
to be so lucky.
dude, right? I'll be like, oh man, my back hurts. I think I'm gonna have to call it a career. That $15 million. Oh, the back hurts. Yeah. $15 million's coming. All guaranteed. Oh, my back. Oh, listen. He tried everything. The organization did right by him by trying. That's a contract that Scott Harris is going to have to own. But it was not great to have a series loss. But look, man, you're inching toward 90 wins. You got to play a lot better brand of baseball. But you got to wake up, because if you don't play well against the Yankees, you're going to get dominated.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And look, they haven't put good baseball together in a while, and it's the season's starting to wrap up, and it's starting to get close. This is an important series, right? You need every win you can muster, because you're trying to lock down that first or second place seed. So you need to start winning a couple of these series. You need to start playing good baseball, start playing some good back-to-back baseball. And they just haven't done it, man. They haven't done it in a while. They haven't looked good. And if you're a Lions fan, I feel like you should be concerned, and you should have questions, because the way they're playing right now, when they get into the playoffs, because at this point it's not if, it's when they get into the playoffs, I don't see them going very far. I have questions up and down this roster. You know, after Tarek Skubal, I'm not really sure what you got. And if the bats go cold, which they have a habit of doing, I don't know where you manufacture any offense from. You don't have any guys who can just kind of stand up and say, I got this, get on my back. All you got to do is just somehow figure out a way to get on base, and I'll get you home. They don't have that. And I don't know who's going to take over that number 2 pitching seed on this team, right? Like, it's Tarek Skubal, and then it's a cast of guys. So unless we're going back to pitching chaos, which at this moment in time, I'm not saying that it's not a possibility, just saying I don't want it to be a possibility. I don't know what you do. I don't know. So hopefully they can win this series. Hopefully they can put a little bit of distance between themselves and other teams, and they can kind of lock down and solidify that first or second playoff seed. But this is a big series, and hopefully they get hopefully they come out the winner of it when it's all said and done.
Yes, and then just for the regular people that really care, my fantasy team won against your dad, so I'm very happy. I felt like I made an epic mistake with Dak Prescott, but that was the nephew's fault. He owns the first 4 picks. I own the rest. So good job, nephew. We are co-running a team, and I did the part where I said, okay, listen, I know you like Dak, but I don't like Dak, so I got Penix. I think I did good by escaping with a win. I like my depth. And I'm very, very happy with the way the league started. I like the way it shakes out. I might have to do one couple maneuvers. I don't know if I have enough time to maneuver it, but I like the fact that Penix has a chance to be my guy in the right spirit of things. So I'm very happy with my fantasy start. I'm 1-0. And now it's going to be a fun opportunity this week for sports. It's going to be a fun week. Bears week, Ben Johnson week is going to be fun. Make sure you stay tuned to @Detroit Podcast for all the trolling, rolling, laughing jokes that are out there. I think you guys are liking the jokes and liking the podcast. Michigan Podcast is definitely firing on all cylinders. He's swinging wildly with Bryce Underwood, so it'll be a fun reaction to his situation. The Wrestling Podcast is always doing great. People love our critiques of the pay-per-views and everything going on with WWE, AEW. Great stuff going on at Detroit Sports Podcast. Fun times, man. And now, the fun part is that people are texting us back with Lions reports. So when people ignore me, I'm just going to call you out and say, hey, I'm not invisible. When you report to your people, I'm not so certain on something with the Lions when I've already talked about it. That's going to be funny to do. So we're having a good time running the podcast. It's been great. Year 13 commences and fun stuff ahead. But, man, it's fun, man. I love the fan base. They were into it on Sunday with the Lions. They were reacting. They're into it. And thank you guys for just making us a small part of the Detroit sports landscape. You come in, you interact, you have fun. And then if you want to read some fun comments, I don't know if I shared this one with you, but it was good. When Kyler Murray showed up in his outfit, Twitter just had the most fun. I don't know if I shared it with you. Just go check out the Cardinals Twitter page. It's Kyler Murray's outfit, and there are 200 of the most delicious, amazing comments. They were like, "Who lets their 4-year-old dress like that? Like, is it back to school day? Like, congratulations, Kyler."
4-year-old dress like that.
It was amazing. The comments were amazing. They were funny, and unfortunately, it is of a bullying nature, but his outfit kind of garnered that, and it was just amazing. Twitter had a field day, and that's what it's for. Have some fun, but let's keep it classy a little bit. But oh my goodness, I feel like you open yourself up when you dress like that. So that's the big one this week, and we'll try to share a little bit of fun posts every now and then that just garner some of the craziest reactions. Make sure you follow Adam on X @AdamRSGROZ. Follow us at Detroit Podcast. Week after week, we'll be here. We'll be fair, but we'll be firm. If it's not good enough, we definitely will talk about it. You can't start the year 0-2. So I think Doc and Jock are predicting a win, but hey, you got to go out there. You got to execute. You can't play bad and win. Not anymore. There's a standard now. Play bad, and the fan base is going to let you have it. I mean, your own core group of, and I'll let you guys know something real fast. They let the Free Press have like 6 credentials, 6, and I'm trying to get 2, and they're like, nah, you're good with 1, 6. I don't write those kind of headline. Like, that is, I think, a little bit of a personal attack, in my opinion. So you let them have 6. All right. Then they wrote it. We say it. Do the Lions have the Timu Ben Johnson? Please let that not be the case. Hopefully John Morton learns from all his extra hours preparing this week. I can't wait to fire it up next week for the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.